The Hawk, the Hound, and the Butterfly. Athena, Chapter 2, Part 1. A bright sun beat down from high in the sky above Athena. Almost midday. The battle had started at first light, but was now coming to an end. Bodies from both sides carpeted the once lush green hillside. Not one of them would be her men. They would never tire, and would continue to fight for as long as it took to claim victory. At least they would, if they wanted to stay a part of her winged guardians. An elite division of the Arcadian army she'd created and commanded herself. The other commanders had their numbers, their fancy weapons, but they were vastly outmatched to what Athena's men could do, what they had done. Athena could have had this battle won within an hour, and without the body count. But she wasn't commander of the entire army, at least not yet. The enemy was foolish, barbaric, brandishing shiny new weapons that they hadn't had a clue how to wield. They should have known not to even attempt to take ground so close to the city. The disadvantage of the terrain alone should have made them reconsider. Athena had the high ground. She could easily see over their hastily built fortifications. It was as if they went in without a plan. But as foolish as they were, Athena was more than happy to claim another victory. Her father would be proud, but would expect no less from her. Athena lowered her head. A trickle of reddened sweat ran down her forehead and into her eyes, blurring her vision. She stabbed her sword into the ground and leant her shield up against it. Athena's hand slid across the top of her helm, a helm that had been specifically designed for her. It had been fashioned into the shape of an eagle's head. The large beak hooked over her nose, creating a Y-shaped opening for her eyes and mouth. Her fingers glided over the finely cut pieces of gold that had been shaped into feathers and fused all over the metal. It was smooth until her fingers came to a dent at the crown of her head. A jagged fissure opened up the metal. Strands of dark brown hair jutted through. A Tekken mace, she recalled, had done the damage. The one that wielded it was a giant, even compared to her, and he had a stench that could flatten a cornfield. Most likely he was an ogre, from the islands in the far north, a place the Tekkens had successfully conquered some time ago. Rumours of the northern ogre's great strength was known in Arcadia, but even more so of their low intelligence, both of which Athena found to be true. The only technique the ogre had was to swing the mace from up and down. That was how he'd managed the unfortunate blow to Athena's helm, but luckily he hadn't learnt the right-to-left technique yet. Athena was able to engage and prevailed in no time. It was sad, really. Had he not been fighting against her, she would have gladly taught him how to fight properly, and had him join her, after he'd bathed in the river first, of course. Athena took off her helm. It was mangled beyond repair now, but it had served its purpose well enough. She tossed it aside. It rolled along the ground and came to a sudden stop, hitting the lifeless body of an enemy soldier. Athena ran her hands through her dark brown hair. Her fingers caught in a tangled mess, matted with blood. That would require a few stitches, but something she would have to see to later. For now, she watched as the few remaining Tekkens stood their last stand. They were spread apart and had no real plan of attack. After all, they had no one to lead them. Athena had taken out their commanding officer earlier, and the rest of the army had just crumbled after that. Watching from the top of a hill, something caught her eye. A Tekken soldier, perfectly capable of battle, ran behind a large stone. Their head poked out from behind it, then ran across the field and ducked down behind the body of an ogre. Athena's own men were taking out a few stragglers down the other side of the hill. None had been able to spot the coward running away. The soldier sprung up and sprinted to the woods. Athena scoffed. Where exactly did that soldier think they were going? Swinging her shield up over her back, Athena pulled her sword from the ground. Dirt and blood clung to the steel blade. She wiped the end on the grass and started down the hill. "Captain!" came a voice from behind Athena. She ignored it and kept going down the hill. towards the trees. "Captain, where are you going?" The voice had caught up to her. Athena didn't have to look to know who it was. Archon, her second in command. Still a boy, but only a few years younger than Athena, he had shown great promise in what he would become, if he followed the right person. A brown scar ran down the right side of his face, over his cheek, across his eye, and stretching over his dark, thick eyebrows, which gave him a permanent scowl. Or maybe he just always felt like scowling. Athena was unsure, but she knew that scar well. She was there when it was born. Athena had been finishing up her early morning routine when she heard a commotion coming from the training yards. A group of young men were standing around watching as a thick and muscular brute was practicing his sword-fighting skills against a kid half his size. The brute was all over the kid, with no sign of letting up. The kid fell backwards and thumped hard into the dirt. The brute stood over him, slicing across the ground, spraying dirt up over the cowering kid. The kid rolled over at the same time the brute swung at the ground. The blade caught the side of the kid's face. Blood seeped through the kid's shaking fingers as he clutched at his cheek. A roar went up from the brute. His cronies joined in, mocking the kid, grabbing at the side of their faces. Athena couldn't believe how a kid like that could get into the academy. She'd had enough, and was about to turn away when the kid leapt up and lashed out at the brute. The brute never saw him coming. The kid had him on his back before he could even raise his sword. The kid punched and clawed at the brute's face until eventually 2 teachers heard the commotion and dragged him off. It was all Athena had needed to see. Archon was short and lean, but didn't let those weaknesses define him. She admired his quick wit and cunning mind, and so he was the first choice when she began recruiting her warriors. Athena kept moving down the hill, Archon still nipping at her heels. "Captain, surely this is not a retreat?" Athena pulled up suddenly. Archon stumbled a few steps down from her. Athena turned, looming over Archon. She grabbed him by his helm, pulling his face up towards hers, so that his toes were grazing the top of the ground. Athena could smell a mixture of dried blood and sweat on him. His expression didn't change, still stony-faced as his eyes stared back at hers. Athena wasn't sure whether she was more annoyed or proud, but she kept up her facade. "Listen here," Athena said. "You should know by now, retreat is not a word you want to use around me, if you want to keep your head." Athena released her grip. Archon dropped to the ground. He stumbled, but managed to catch himself before he tumbled down the hill. "Check the field for anything useful, then burn the dead when you're done. I'm off to get a straggler." "Yes, Captain," Archon replied. A sly smile passed across his face, a smile Athena noticed, a smile she would remember later. Broken tree branches and grass that had been bent underfoot led the way for Athena. The Tekken's stride length was considerably far apart, meaning he was in quite a hurry, something Athena already concluded with his lack of concern for concealing his tracks. The trail led deep into the woods. A fallen tree trunk blocked the way. Its bark had smudged red clay soil all over it, common to the area where the battle was. A heavy outturned footprint on the other side of the tree led Athena to believe he had twisted his ankle in his haste. Good. She would be able to catch up to him sooner. A disturbance to a group of shrubs caught Athena's eye. She moved in closer to investigate. Hastily stashed between the branches was a heavy leather vest, a dagger, and a flask. The liquid inside the flask sloshed about as Athena turned it over in her hand. She flicked open the stopper in the top and was hit by a pungent stench. Rum, a weak man's courage. Athena tipped the flask and poured its contents onto the ground. It seeped into the grass but still invaded Athena's nostrils. The dagger, however, would be more than useful. Its handle was dark blue with a gold jagged pattern winding around it towards the blade. Athena passed the blade over her finger. It sliced fine, leaving a stinging trail of blood. She slipped it between the lining of her boot and continued following the Tekken's trail. The trail came to a halt at the river. Athena scowled. The river was the border Arcadia shared with the realm of Medina. They'd once had a peaceful alliance with the Medeans, trading wood and crops for the many fine spices of Medina. Athena had even trained some of their men, but that was a long time ago. Medina was now under Tekken control. Athena unbuckled the straps on her one-armed plate armor. A golden griffin etched onto the breastplate would reveal to anyone where her loyalties lie. She slid off the quilted jacket she wore underneath, revealing markings that covered her left arm. Tattooed onto Athena's skin were feathers, each one unique, each one significant. Some, like the ones on the top of her index finger, were tiny, but as they stretched up the length of Athena's arm and across her shoulder, the tattoos grew in size. However, there were still patches of bare skin, like a painting yet to be finished. Grabbing a fistful of dirt, Athena rubbed it over her shield, dulling its bright shine. She hid it, along with all her armor and weapons, beneath a thorny bush, shoving a tree branch over the top to make sure it wouldn't be found. The air was cool now that she was only dressed in her linen singlet and tights, but the new dagger, safely secured in her firmly laced boots, kept her warm enough. At the side of the riverbank, a tuft of grass had been pushed the opposite way it was growing, towards the water. A few steps closer, and Athena spotted a smudge of blood on a rock, still wet from whoever left it there. Athena slipped steadily into the water and waded down the river. The current pushed her forward as she kept her eyes on the bank. The water was cool and soothing to her aching muscles. The dirt and blood she'd acquired from the morning's events lifted off her body and washed away as she swam. The river flowed onwards into a cave. Athena paddled towards the side and grabbed onto a rock just before the opening of the cave. She peered inside. Far in the distance was a speck of light. There was nothing but the water flowing, the wind rustling through the leaves, and birds chirping nearby. The Tekken must have gone through, so Athena had to as well. Athena entered the cave. The light faded quickly, engulfing her in the darkness, making her eyes useless. Water echoed through the cave as it lapped at the walls. It had cooled down even more inside. Athena picked up her pace, both to keep her body warm and to get out of there sooner. The light from the opening grew bigger as Athena kept swimming. Finally, she emerged from the darkness into the bright shining sun and was momentarily blinded. Athena blinked rapidly, adjusting her eyes just in time to notice a muddy spot on the grass of the riverbank. Athena swam over to the side of the river and inspected the ground. There were footprints, the same size as the ones she'd been following earlier, and they made a muddy getaway through the trees. Athena climbed onto the bank, ensuring to cover her own up, and followed the tracks. The trees thinned out, and between them, a large building appeared in a clearing. The red bricks seemed so out of place amongst the towering green trees. Athena crept up behind one on the very edge of the tree line, peering round the trunk. The metal roof was decorated with heavily barbed wire, and there were several spinning cylinders that Athena thought were metal chimneys, only they didn't have any smoke rising from them. 2 Tekkens stood guard at the only doorway that Athena could see. An old wooden sign nailed above the doorway read, "Hospital." Athena frowned. She'd never seen a hospital where 2 guards who stood at the entrance were so heavily armed. Each had a crossbow at the ready, a sword sheathed on their backs, and a spiked mace strapped at their waists. Athena patted the dagger in her boot. It might soon be required. Athena made her way along the perimeter of the building. The ground all the way round was covered in crushed pebbles, so she stuck to just inside the grassy tree line. The building was plain, rectangular, with several windows on each side, all blacked out. On the opposite side of the building to the entrance, Athena found one of the windows ajar. Strings tugged at the corners of her lips. Athena took 3 leaping steps across the crushed rocks and crouched beneath the open window.